In today's video, I'm going to go over my favorite techniques to prevent your makeup from getting cakey and what to try if your makeup turns cakey throughout the day. Hey everyone, this is Lisa. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Lisa Monique Beauty, where we cover all things beauty and lifestyle for the over 50 woman. So today's video, I am just going to go over what to do if your makeup gets cakey. Now, there are a lot of definitions of cakey makeup. I mean, I feel like it's really a catch-all for your foundation doesn't look smooth, so we're going to call it cakey. So some definitions are your makeup is fading off and it starts breaking up, and they call that cakey, or it starts moving into fine lines and wrinkles, and so it kind of cakes in those areas. Or just overall, you put your makeup on, it looks great, but as you start powdering it, or even just going throughout the day, as your face gets drier, your makeup starts getting cakey and splotchy. So I'm going to talk mostly about the last two, when it moves into your fine lines, or it's just too much makeup. So what to do when you have too much foundation and product building up in certain areas of your face. Now, the techniques to prevent your makeup from getting cakey are not all that different from the techniques that you might try to get your makeup to last all day. So we're going to go over several of them, and they may seem repetitive if you've watched some of my other videos, but really it is a lot of the same techniques. Okay, the first step is to prep your skin. Now, that sounds very obvious, but it really is the most important step. If you have dry skin, you want to make sure your skin is properly hydrated and that the products have absorbed fully into your skin before you start applying your makeup. If you have oily skin, you're going to do the same. You're going to make sure that your drier areas are properly hydrated, and then you are going to use maybe a mattifying primer or product in the T-zone or those oilier areas to try and build a shield from the oils and your makeup. In my video on how to get your makeup last all day, I did talk about using setting spray on a sponge and pressing it on, between the different layers of your makeup. That can also help block the oil, help get your makeup from shifting and moving. So that's really, really important when you're trying to get your makeup to last all day and not to shift around. And step number 2 is you don't want to use too many products. And so if your skin is properly hydrated, then you actually need less foundation or concealer to cover it. And so it's also really important when you're applying your makeup not to layer too many products. So you don't want a heavy eye cream and then a color corrector and then a concealer and then your foundation over it. So if I need a lot of coverage on my eyes, I might choose to just use a color corrector and a concealer instead of color corrector, concealer, and foundation over that area. And a lot will also depend on the products you choose. You want more pigment, you want fuller coverage products if you have a lot of dark circles that you're trying to cover up, as opposed to keep applying a thicker and thicker layer. You just might want to be experimenting with different products. Also, another technique, especially if you have trouble with product moving into your fine lines around your eyes, is to smile and try and avoid applying your concealer and foundation where your smile lines are. So if you have the discoloration, apply it just on those discolored areas and really avoid the areas that have the deepest smile lines, or go very thin over those areas to prevent your makeup from moving around as much. Third, you want to press it into your skin to make sure it's not moving around that much. Of course, I like my Stands Out Beauty sponge because it's a dry sponge. I don't feel like I'm taking off my makeup or moving my makeup around. I feel like it's just catching that excess makeup over your skin. You can use a regular beauty blender, a damp beauty blender if that's your choice, but you definitely want to make sure you're pressing makeup into your skin. I saw a Wayne Goss video where he said, and this was a couple years ago, but I think he said he spent 3 or 4 minutes per side on his clients pressing the makeup into the skin, because that's how you're going to get it to really adhere to your skin and less chance of it looking cakey because you have too much product building and mixing with other products on your face. The next hint to prevent your makeup from caking is to blot your face before applying your powder. So you can use the Stands Out Beauty sponge, you can use a Kleenex, just blotting your face with a tissue. Sometimes I think the little powdery finish of a Kleenex kind of helps mattify, and also if you have like a more dewy or more moisturizing foundation, it can kind of prevent that from stirring and mixing up with your powders, which then can look cakey. So you want to be really careful when you are setting with powder and use just really, really thin layers. So I can put my foundation on and I can think it looks so good in my mirror, and then I go in with a heavier powder, especially if it's tinted, or maybe it's even a powder foundation that sometimes I might use to finish my face. And if it goes on too heavy and it mixes with a more luminous or dewy foundation, it can tend to look really, really cakey on the skin. So when I am using a tinted powder, I really go light. You really want to tap it off and make sure you're using just the smallest amount to set your makeup, and you're not really trying to add another layer of coverage with that powder. And then you can try and set your face with a different setting spray. So if you have oily skin, you might want to lean towards a matte setting spray. If you have drier skin, you can use a more luminous setting spray, because that does help take away that powdery look on your face and also can help your makeup adhere better to the skin. So really what you're trying to do is use just the thinnest layers to cover the things that you need to cover. And as you continue to layer on the rest of your makeup, you want to make sure each layer is well adhered to your skin and you're not applying it too heavy. For me, my biggest mistake when I will find my makeup is looking too cakey, it's when I use too much product. And usually it happens when I'm using those heavier, maybe more fuller coverage foundations, and I will look in the bathroom or whatever light I'm getting ready in, and I think it just looks so fantastic, and then I walk out into the natural light and I'm like, oh my goodness, I cannot walk around with this much makeup on your face. What do you do if you have so much makeup on, or it really is caking and you've already applied your full face? How can you fix that? Couple techniques to try. One, if you're just out and about and you start seeing your makeup moving into the creases of your eyes or into the wrinkles or fine lines here, you can just use your fingers and try and pat it out and then tap it with some setting powder. If it's really dry, if under your eyes is looking really dry and cakey, if you have a little hand cream or moisturizer in your purse or bag and a little concealer, usually when I go out and want my makeup to last all day, I'll just toss a concealer and a lipstick in my bag. That's all, and powder and blotting powder. That's usually all I take. But if you just mix a little bit of the concealer with your lotion, and then you can tap it back on to kind of rebuild the coverage if you need the coverage, but still keep it looking really dewy or fresh, that can really help. But when you have a whole face that looks bad, sometimes you just need to take that top layer off, and you might have to refresh or retouch up more makeup. And again, you can do it with a wet beauty blender or damp beauty blender. You can start buffing off your face. My technique of choice is to use one of those microfiber washcloths. This is a stands out washcloth. And you can use a regular washcloth too. I just like the microfiber because they're softer and they don't feel like they're scratching or anything on my face. But I will get this good and damp and squeeze out all the extra water, and then I will pat it over my face to remove that extra makeup. And I won't necessarily go all the way back, because usually when my makeup's getting cakey, it's right on this cheek area. That's where I really notice it, or, right down here on my face. So I will just kind of blot it, take off that extra layer, and then depending on how it looks, sometimes I just need a little concealer to put back over my nose, because my nose is a little darker, and just touch up a little concealer right there, and maybe touch up my blush a little bit, but then usually I am ready to go. So I don't necessarily wash everything off and start from scratch, but I do take off that top layer because it's looking a little cakey. I've also been out and about and gone to a restroom out in public place, and my foundation just looked horrible. I just look like an old lady. It has just settled and set, and it looks really crinkly. It's the same thing. I will take some toilet paper, wet paper, damp paper towel, and also just try and blot off that extra layer. Just, usually just right here, and then just do a little touch up. And usually it is good enough to get me through the rest of the night without being embarrassed that I don't want anyone to look too close because my makeup is looking really heavy and cakey. If your makeup is caking up because it's too oily, of course, you probably already know to carry blot powders with you. Again, you can also blot with maybe some toilet paper, paper towel. I love the MAC blot powder. It's a pressed powder to just kind of lift that shine, but it doesn't seem to build up on my skin. It just doesn't keep adding layers and layers of product. Even though you get a tint, I use the medium deep, and I use it both winter and summer. It is a good kind of neutral, but not white, translucent powder for me, but that also can really work and help you just kind of blot up that little area after you try some of the other techniques to maybe move your foundation or concealer around to get it to look a little more smooth. And so those are my tips for preventing and fixing cakey makeup. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I sure appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.